Well, first of all, thank you very much for the generous welcome. Appreciate that. I'm very pleased to be here. I've appreciated the long history of the Nordic chapter, supporting the open BIM agenda, and I think one of the earliest adopters. Denmark was one of the earliest adopters of the IFC standard. So your history is long and strong, and for me, it's a very sort of proud, significant moment this year when you're establishing your own chapter in Denmark. So congratulations to all of you for that milestone and the international contributions. And I think that's particularly why I was very pleased to be here in person. I think I have to acknowledge that it's really touch and go for me with the COVID situation to be able to come. So here I am, and a very interesting conference. This is a really truly exciting time, I think, for open standards at the moment. I'll try to inject some of that excitement into what we're doing. We're still, there is still a great deal more to do, as Martin has alluded, and the focus on sort of how we make it easy for people to map their standards, in their processes. And I don't think we need, when it comes to processes, many more of them will be best practice processes, and I think what we need is enabling underlying technical standards that are removed from the user and making it easier for people to use it. And I think with some of the things we're doing, we can see the way to do that. So let me actually start to use the slides. There we go. So I've got move on there to some of this introduction. I also want to touch on the value of open standards, so that rings actually quite well with the theme that has come out already from the two speakers this morning. I would like to update you on some of the work we're doing in our programs in international, and to talk about the strength and depth of the buildingSMART community. So I hope this is almost boring for some of you, but our mission to enable the full benefits from digital ways of working for the built asset industry. Full benefits for me means really full value to society at large. And that implies open, for me. That's the only way I think you get that full value. And the built asset industry means that I am wanting very much to include the clients, the end users, governments and owners in this target. The construction industry description very often leaves those groups out, and I think it's vital that they are included. GlaxoSmithKline, for example, don't think they're in the construction industry, yet they own a huge amount of real estate, and it's important that we bring them into this discussion. They're the people who can help change a lot. We are open, neutral, not-for-profit and international, and these sort of values are paramount and important. They are the basis on which people commit and engage with us to build, and it's all about, in the end, establishing relationships of trust. That's what we're trying to do. This is a quick summary of buildingSMART, and I guess, for me, key things here, fundamentally, the history, the background is rests with our chapters, and that cohort of organisations is our governance body as buildingSMART International Limited. That we have opened up to members as a way of supporting the leadership on a permanent basis, and our summits are important. So our partners, and I'll talk about who they are, and sponsors are needed very much to get our work done. We're trying to make sure the work we do, that we don't become a simple talking shop, but we are focused on really delivering outputs and the journey ahead. Working through 3 programs: the user program, solutions and standards, and compliance. And as a chapter here, you think that the sort of weight of leadership responsibility in the user program is perhaps 70-30, and then in the solutions and standards, I'd say 30-70, and compliance would probably be 50-50. I think at the moment, most of our work and focus is on the middle ones, solutions and standards, but actually we need to invest much more in both developing more user guidance and help for people to engage with open digital ways of working, and to build out our compliance program that have much more validation so that there's much more reliability built into the system. This is an old graph, perhaps now, from McKinsey, and many people don't like it because they sort of say that it still undermines the work that construction does in terms of improving efficiency and taking work off-site. But I think it does indicate still the fundamental figures that actually were reflected in Martin's speech, the 58%, that there is still a huge amount of waste in construction and a great deal of massive economic opportunity to be found. And I would say just referring a little bit back to Martin's speech and your introductory speech, open standards are the vehicle for not allowing proprietary standards to dominate. As a private standards that Amazon may have are, of course, private standards. But they're not the ones that mean you can control your own data. And I would say as a government or as a building owner, you actually have a responsibility in the future to have a very clear data strategy. And that is not something that we see explicitly said now, but we will see that, I'm certain. We're in the early stages of a digital revolution. It's like the Wild West, people are grabbing territory. And at some point, society will have to fight back and put some stakes in the ground. But I am convinced that large corporates will have to have data strategy, and the key to that will be an ability to control, port, manage your own data without being held ransom by any particular cloud or service provider. So, key benefits from open, neutral data exchanges: flexibility, sustainability, efficiency, access, and opportunity. And I guess I'm speaking there to the people I regard as the consumers or owners of the data, the natural owners, and the people trying to sort of sell into that. I think some of the vendors will improve their performance by opening into international markets and having better and easier access. It's just as important for product manufacturers as well. So I don't just talk here about, if you like, construction clients or the building industry. I'm including suppliers, product manufacturers, and the owners, and that's very important. At the moment, we have these three-letter acronyms on the right, but just to make it easy for people, I like to make sure we use plain English from time to time, and those are some of the things that we're trying to do there. So to emphasise those points, picking up the independent control of your data, better decision making, I think, from very clear, doing your own analysis and understanding your data the way it suits your business. I think the reality is the basis for a digital twin, open digital twin. That is the objective from our rail groups at the moment, very much, and we're working with that. And actually, I even see new advisory business models where consultants are offering to manage digital twins on an open basis on behalf of clients, which is a new proposition coming out of these things. Transparency on key indicators, quality and cost control, ultimately saving money, and the portability of non-proprietary data. So, okay, we know there's a lot of history. Martin had explained it's been going on for many years. Can we actually, is this all a fairy tale? Can we actually use these things? Yes, all right. So I've got a couple of examples now from last year's buildingSMART Awards. And what I really want to show is that this is IFC in use. This is our underlying standards being used on major projects. We are really delighted with the award submissions we've been getting, and that the exciting thing for me is that they are evidence that these standards are, they work, they're being used, they're practical. Yes, there's lots of things we can do to improve them, but this is a really exciting confirmation. So the first one is a Queen's Wharf project from Brisbane, Australia. And as you can see from the slide there, $3.6 Australian billion project with its sort of open BIM at its core. IFC was the file format used for the data exchange methodology there, and more than 250 design models are shared per week. So this is large scale and needs a certain investment, but it is confirmation that this technology works. It's not a fairy tale. Perhaps moving on then to talk about something in the more sort of the civil side of things here. This is the Hinkley Point Power Station in the UK, another sort of mega project, again underlying the reliability, and particularly important here that the housing was used to design the rebar and construction pores in a way that gave the quality assurance required for this, if you like, high quality facility. And that included this automated model checking and the delivery of the models right to the crews there. So this year we're obviously running the awards program again. We now have a platform we're using called Awards Force to capture that data. And a lot of the things we're going to do is allow, let's say, through our chapters, access to the submissions. Because I think we don't have the resources to write up lots of case studies, but we think that the quality of the inputs we're getting is of such a high standard that there's a great benefit from demonstrating that to people. So we are going to make that available. Indeed, I think this week we are publishing the finalists list and access it, opening up, I think, some of their information for this year's awards. So now I'd like to move on. Sustainability is a big point, and obviously in this, certainly in Europe at the moment with the green sort of push from the Commission, I think it's, in my mind, very clear and obvious when you think about it that I believe our standards can underpin improving and attaining these sustainability goals for goals 6 through 13 are all areas where I believe the buildingSMART standards can help and improve our ability as a society to achieve these goals. So just moving on to more specific sort of demonstration of where the IFC mandates are being taken up, I particularly want to draw out the USA. Actually, this is what I want to pick on. So AASHTO is the American Association for all 52 departments of transport in the USA. And a year ago, so November, at the end of last year, they formally adopted IFC, and they are putting together teams to deploy it. They have a deployment project for IFC bridges and structures that is ongoing at the moment in parallel with our own projects. But that's obviously a very big and significant adoption and very important for us. That's a new one. And perhaps the other one is pick up the UK, because the UK has obviously done some very high policy type statements and is working at, let's say, a sort of strategic level in terms of the processes, and that's why I say 19650 was one of the first things that they were pushing. But they've also recently had an interoperability expert group review what standards should be used and followed, and they have indeed identified IFC as one of the key standards they want to pursue. So again, that's another significant new step in terms of uptake and deployment. I'm sort of, in this presentation, I will go through the projects that were sort of current and update you on those, but I want to also give you a sense that we have some vision of where we're going, and that a sort of a clear roadmap for extending and modernising IFC. So, we have the domain extensions, so that's the inclusion of road and rail, is a huge milestone, and it's taken certainly a lot of the time over the last 5 or so years devoted to those additional extensions. They are very significant in terms of opening up the IT schema to really the areas of the economy where there was big spend going on. There is certain minimum service needs that are needed to support IFC, so I think high quality assured publications, thinking about publishing obviously on GitHub, and also access to the buildingSMART dictionary to address all of the semantic requirements and to allow, let's say, Denmark to use IFC directly by translating or having the links to the Danish version of those standards. We need to extend, push the deployment of these standards into vendors. We're working very much with them at the moment on that. Scalability for me is the point about interfaces. And we're doing a lot of work to develop APIs based on the data dictionary and for IFC, and we have a project running for open APIs for computational environments. So these interfaces, I would again endorse Martin's point about that. It's a key area that we're looking to solve and address technically. And the whole life sustainability is us working with people like whole life functionality. It is working with other standards, ontologies, so the geospatial area or GS1 on enabling commercial workflows, or indeed people like ICMS to make sure that we are extending the scope and fulfilling all the requirements that users need of a working environment. So this is just a point here that these, in this box here, we have the sort of program that has been worked on in the last few years, and you can really understand then from that work that we're at the point now where we have published those standards and they're out for inspection. And one thing I'm also ambitious to do is to find a way to coordinate using tools the development of, let's say, process know-how, learning, across countries, and to capture the know-how of smaller groups. Because especially, I think, as people don't want to travel, or clearly there's a climate impact of having people travel and the cost, if we can use tools to capture use cases and document processes, I think we can enable a lot more effective capturing of process know-how in a way that will make it much more accessible. This is a data dictionary, and I suppose I wanted to really emphasise here that the new implementation will meet the new ISO standards. It will sort of use JSON, which means it can work with the web. It will have a linked data interface, and I think the database structure is a structure that is recognisable to the technology people working in that area. So this is a very important development. There is quite a lot of work going on at the moment to develop plugins from some of the key vendors. SketchUp have recently published one, and we're very keen to get as much data into this as we can. So again, I think one of the things we want to work on is with other people, such as the ICMS we spoke about, get their terminology and semantics in here, so we can all share that. Software, two things I would say here. We're looking at the way we organise the actual schema to make it easier for software vendors to implement. At the moment, as there are more and more MVDs, as they're called, it gets more and more complicated for vendors to actually implement them. So we're looking at the structure of that, and we'll redesign that as part of the next generation IFC 5 to simplify that, and that will, I think, enable much easier validations of the workflow solutions. That's really what people want to see. So again, that's going to be a smaller core and more clear modules, and then a standard way of specifying your information requirements so that can be validated. Then that will probably be a new standard information delivery specification. And then talking about scalability is obviously using that those new domains, but also now working with interfaces use, the APIs and access to the clouds to make this technology, if you like, fit for purpose in a modern computer technology environment. And that's all outlined in the technical roadmap that I'll mention shortly. And that whole life functionality, that is less about IFC and it's more about working with other ontologies. So we've got the sort of clear steps there of what has to be done. And that's obviously gaining pace at the moment. We've been working with a thought leadership group to help put together a paper for that. We are establishing a digital twin working group within buildingSMART, and a lot of our rooms are also discussing that. So I see this as a live and active topic. We will have in the chapter conference, we're going to have later on this year, some sessions there for our chapters on digital twins as well. And now coming back to some of the domain work I mentioned earlier, here you can see the group of, let's say, key sponsors, backers who have led that work. I'm very proud, actually, that this is mostly rail owners, owner operators, not vendors. It is international. It's certainly strong European content, but strong Chinese content. Railways aren't such a big deal in the US, so I can't do much about that. But it is a very important, significant group of leaders who have stood behind and got this going. The work has been split into two sort of main phases. Phase one was complete in 2020, and phase two is the work we're now focusing on, which is about the deployment. I mean, this project was very important, and it allowed us to look at how we develop our standards and the tools we use. So we've moved to using things like UML and modernized our tool set to enable easier engagement from people who understand these things. And I think that is another big point about opening up buildingSMART. We shouldn't be using bespoke tools when, let's say, commercial alternatives are kind of available, and much easier for people to sustain that. And the phase two work now is really started about 3 months ago, trying to really work with vendors about getting this deployed. And obviously there's a big overlap between that work and some of this infrastructure extensions deployment project. So again, this work covers bridges, roads, ports and waterways, were the sort of headline domains that we focused on. We'll see, in order to cover those, if you like, client-facing domains from a technical point of view, we've covered off some more domains. And again, you see a very broad range of parties contributing to that work. And we are, we're now, I'll talk about it a little bit. So talking perhaps about the ports and waterways, this was actually one that came to us from second largest Chinese construction company, CCCC. They've worked very much with Royal Haskelley and Cardiff University, and really extended the sort of IFC to deal with those areas. I think that utilities is a natural area where we do need to do further work. So let's say water utilities and power utilities are sort of, again, domains that I still would like to reach out to and get them engaged to get the capabilities that they need embedded into it. Roads has been a long-running journey. Certainly before my time, started by KICT from Korea, but certainly with a lot of help from the, I suppose, Nordic road and rail authorities, has been pushed forward in the last few years and kept pace with the rail project, so that these two projects are sort of symbiotically making progress together. They are working with the US project, which is called the Bridges and Structures, that's the name they've given to it, where they're working to deploy what we call roads and bridges separately with vendors in the US. And again, obviously, we were coordinating that. We have got a new US chapter, and we've got the, let's say, the master consultant for that project is also a buildingSMART member through the US chapter. So that's important. All of these standards that are published are open for comment. They're at the candidate standard stage. We are expecting that once we finish and complete this deployment testing, there will be a period to update the findings from that, and then that next year we will take it to ISO, as we have always kind of said we would do. And I think that is actually an important statement to make. Clients ultimately, I was asked recently by HS2, were we definitely going to ISO? So clients who want to rely on these standards want to know they're going to be open and maintained, and that's the sort of long-term promise of reliability that we're building into that. So I said that we are covered more domains than the headlines there. Geotechnical and tunnels are things that are ongoing at the moment. So obviously the alignment is one of the early things we need to do. This obviously all includes buildings. It's clear to me that what we need to do in buildings areas is focus much more on the process, improvement in using the schema. Obviously the underlying standard has been there for many years, but there are very few sort of process best practice examples. So that's a priority for the building room at the moment. I'd like to talk now a little bit about our technical roadmap. This is something that we put together early this year, at the end of last year and early this year. Very important, I think, to give vendors and users confidence about the future sustainability of the standard. And I believe this improves that. And then quickly moving on to the digital twins work. Our next phase that is now to formally establish that within our governance structure and to get it linked into some of the other digital twin initiatives going on worldwide. Really want to focus there on our virtual summit. It's coming up between later this month and early next month. That will be an online summit, so we hope to open registration next week, and please look out for that and sign up. I'd like to talk about the chapters that we have worldwide, particularly here the professional certification program. 15 chapters are involved in that, and doing a great deal of work to support it. We think that's strategically important for all our chapters, and what's really required is the sort of the scale from all the chapters. There are sort of two levels to that now: professional certification at the practitioner level and at the foundation level, which is where we're focused at the moment. In terms of the awards program for 2019, I mentioned that it's been very successful. The 2020 version of that of the awards is sort of current, and we will announce the winners at the conference later this month. Now a quick run through of some of our parties, and I won't dwell much on our partners and the community. I won't dwell much on these slides, but just to give you a sense of scale at the moment. And I hope, on the partners list, I hope to be able to add the Digital Twin Consortium, which I think will be important. I'm very grateful to all these sponsors for their hard work and support. Organisational membership, it splits around a third owners, a third AEC supply chain, and a third vendors, which I think is a very good balance. And now quickly stepping through some of our members. These are our strategic members, and they've been with us a long time, very grateful to this group. Our multinational members, again, a growing group, which I think reflects the strength of our chapter network as much as it does buildingSMART International, and our standard members, which is a group I expect to stay. This is the bedrock that I suppose I'm looking to grow and to have a sustainable repeating core. And this is the strength of the chapter community at the moment. There are recently had more expressions of interest from Brazil and from Chile, so growing interest around the world, and we're making a lot of progress, I think, in the US as well. And just to sort of remind people what we're doing in buildingSMART International is providing a lot of the coordinating glue to help this whole network grow. So, thank you for your time, and apologies if I don't run this time.